What's up, everybody? Welcome back. So I've been working on this SCX24 build for the last 4 or 5 months on and off, ever since I picked up this C10 in a pretty awesome Facebook marketplace trade. So I've just been trying to do something unique, but simple, easy, and affordable without spending too much money on a bunch of crazy parts. So here's my little journal. You can kind of just see how things have unfolded over the last few months. Ooh. Just looks like the body might need a little bit of a trim if I want to use these tires. But I think I'm going to use a different body. I got an old model from when I was a kid that'll fit on this thing perfectly, I think. So here I'm just kind of trying out the fit of the body, just leaning the grill up on the body mount in the front, and then now taking apart the battery mount to make a perfect place to glue the body down, and you end up getting a nice little kind of pivot there so I can use a magnet in the front, just flip the body up and down to work on it, and plenty of room for a driver. So for the tires, I'm using the undersized spare tires from the All-Star 8560 or the C8801, and then the full-size tires for the rear, kind of giving it a offset stance that's lower in the front. These tiny little Palm Beach, Palm Power LiPo batteries are only 100 milliamp, so they don't last super long. You maybe get 15 minutes, but they fit anywhere. I was able to fit it on right on top of the servo there. I used some Velcro and a little rubber band just to keep it nice and secure. But this thing's got plenty of room. I could fit pretty much any battery I wanted in the back there. It's just cool to have it all the way up front, sitting right on the servo, as you can see. And that's just a stock, mostly a stock setup, but I was able to fit that on. So if you're going to be building anything kind of funky and custom like this guy, or like anything else, it's probably number one thing I would recommend is just keeping all your weird little extra parts when you get replacements. Drive shafts, body parts. This was from a TRX4M, the drive shaft. It had these little rubber bands that rot out, kind of a junk design, but I kept them, and I was able to turn it into this little floodlight. So kind of like some Ed Roth's cars, like the Mysterion. So yeah, just keep all your little parts. You never know what you can make out of them. So I repainted this thing a bit and added some stickers. I got the battery mounted on top of the servo, sitting on the axle here. Hey, Sunday. And then there were some obvious changes that I was going to need to make. So for starters, more weight up front, brass steering links, and then with these big tires, we need to change the gear ratio. So I got a 33% underdrive for the rear, and then it's bouncy. So we got some Majora shocks for the back since I'm running no springs and rubber bands on the front. So I'm gonna put all these on here right now and see if this runs any better.
And you can see here that I added some high clearance aluminum lower links, but it doesn't really seem to matter when your tires don't grip. So here you can see where the rubber bands on the front shocks are really limiting my travel and making it hard to get over pretty much anything. Also, that front grille is really not helping anybody at all right now.
I know she wants.
These tires are way too firm. They don't grip for anything. So, even though this setup looks kind of cool, I need to figure out something else completely. So I really wanted the rat rod look to work out with the smaller tires in the front, but these Endura mud terrain tires work so much better, and honestly, I don't hate the way they look. Honestly, you probably can't tell just watching the video, but I can barely steer at all. This thing is way too heavy for the stock servo. Even with just a little bit of brass, it basically just wants to go in a straight line now.
All right. So it looked pretty cool with the smaller tires in the front. I like the rat rod look, but those little guys just weren't gripping. Even with the underdrive in the rear, those small tires were still kind of firm too. So these bigger, much softer Endura tires worked much better on the rocks. I might just leave these on too because they look pretty badass. I think it might even look more badass. They're starting to get a little bit of a tractor look. You know, not quite as rat rod as I was going for. This is a little bit more of like a monster truck woody. So I'm gonna run it like this. The clearance is better now, but still not perfect. So I might take this off or figure out a way to like shift it up a little bit. But everything else I'm pretty happy with. I might also loosen up the rubber bands on the front just so I get a little bit more flex easier because these rubber bands are tight and just kind of don't want to flex that much. Don't expect to put on this much brass or even like half this much brass unless you upgrade your servo. This thing doesn't even want to turn. When it's sitting up on the rocks and I turn the steering wheel all the way, it just barely moves. So I'm going to put a new servo in it. Pretty happy with the design overall. Little red light inside. I wonder if this is even focused. I can't tell from here. Added a little Emax servo, a lot stronger than the stock one. It was catching though. It's just slightly wider than the stock. So I trimmed this corner with a blade, so you can see it does not get caught up there like it was. And so I've completely moved the shock placements around on this thing. It went down to the frame back here on the front, and then I flipped the body mount upside down to get a lower, more forward shock placement back here, and then switch to the lightest weight springs I got, so it doesn't sit so high. It was sitting up like this, like a stink bug. This is down low, has a little bounce to it. All right. It's pretty steep right there.
I'm honestly really stoked on how this thing is pulling itself up and over obstacles. But this is my first time ever playing with overdrive or underdrive.
Since I've been filming, I think my least favorite thing about this car is the stock controller. Like, not only is this one squeaky, but it's got this tiny little thing. And look how the foam slides. Anyways. Okay, this is the hardest line in the yard. Honestly, the only car I have that can do this consistently is a 6x6. Oh. Alright, let's try this with two hands.
Oh.
Oh, almost made it.
Ooh, this might be a good thumbnail. Honestly, thanks for sticking around and watching the video. I'm surprised anyone would stick around this long. I am happy with how this build came out. There's definitely room for improvement. You know, maybe you guys can give me some suggestions in the comments about a chassis upgrade or some electronics upgrades. Those are the things I left stock, and definitely see where there's some room for them to improve, but I don't want to break the bank, so just let me know what you think. And I'm excited for you guys to meet my new co-host in a few weeks. I don't know when they're going to get here. They're traveling right now, but the show's going to be completely different and a lot more fun. So I'm excited for everybody to meet them. Take care, everybody. Peace. All right. And this little battery finally ran out.